Thank you very much to our partners, PhotoWings, without whom we wouldn't be able to offer this platform for free to everybody, which is amazing. Please do go back and look through the archives of the recording sessions, the previous sessions. It's a really rich body of material that we're developing. And we've got some very exciting plans for expanding the programming that we do with VII Insider. So look forward for some announcements very soon about that and how we're going to be doing even more fantastic content for you moving forward. Anyway, without further ado, as we say, John, the floor is yours if you'd like to get us started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for everyone that's here. Oh, I'm just looking at a picture of Paul on my screen. Not that I don't want to look at you, Paul, but I feel like you're just staring at me, and it's lovely. Let me open up the chats as well so I can see what's happening here. Well, so I have been for a while a bit bored by what I'm seeing, sometimes bored by what I'm making, what I'm creating, and for a long time, and for a short time, I've often noticed that when I'm bored, I'm not going into myself. And when I'm bored by what I'm seeing, and I'm being very daring in saying this, I'm not saying that all the photography and visual storytelling that I'm seeing is boring. No, it all has meaning and purpose, especially if there's much giving to it. But I'm seeing things over and over the same. And as we continue to suffer and torture ourselves with terrible events that take place across our planet, and beautiful events too, but just the torture of it, I began quite a while ago to get pained and exhausted by noticing, or feeling, more so noticing, that there was not an end result. If you've been to some of my workshops, or maybe these webinars or other things, I've mentioned at times that when I'm behind the camera, I'm seeing the same thing. And I was torturing myself, and I mean that in a non-destructive way, but sometimes mentally destructive, and I hope a good way, to try to see beyond the obvious of myself. And it's not about me, it's the obvious that is occurring before me. So that somehow, in my extremely insignificant speck of a much vaster universe speck within a much bigger, limitless essence of specks that we all are in this universe of specks, how can I somehow give more to express, and yes, to make us think? And I often wondered if, because I'm seeing it the same way, am I giving enough justice, enough love in this need of storytelling? And I began to feel within myself that I needed to stop when this occurred, and to literally put my camera down, this tool, this extension of myself that doesn't matter, the tool. I just happen to have this almost often with me. And then to pull back, always removing myself, because these topics and narratives that we work on are, of course, not about us. It's the removing yourself to beside yourself. And if you have that unbelievable will to put yourself behind yourself, and to see it in a way that would give to a greater understanding of the enormity that any one of us are standing before or are in the presence of, so that we can be these simple vessels of visual communication. And I called this, I had to come up with some name of this Zoom, spirituality of I think it's of seeing or feeling, or of photography. But it's not about religious spirituality. You could probably walk that way if you want. But that sometimes muddles things, or puts too much emphasis in one sort of orbit, because there's multiple orbits of our collective humanity. And what I wanted to share or try to give to all of us is these moments when you put down the camera, when you put down the tool, when you put down the microphone, when you put down the pen, when you put down the cello, when you put down the ladle of your cooking, or when you put down the shovel and you're working in the garden, and you stop a minute and you think on how do I give to this garden? I want a garden to be a forest. And I want the stories that I work on to be a forest. I don't want to maintain a garden. A garden, if you try to structure everything, you will spend a greater part of your life sustaining it, where nature is probably the best gardener that ever existed. It's already in balance with itself. And how do I put balance within myself? How do we all put balance into ourselves, so that we can sort of find the vast forest within ourselves that's naturally there, but we at times tend to suppress it, or try to organize it, or we overthink it, we overchew it. And the vastness of trying to organize the enormity that's before us, which again is just this forest of beauty and madness at the same time. A lot of times when a forest is gone mad, with many ways like humanity, it's when something evasive has been put into it, causing conflict in that space. And how do we, as just people who happen to use a tool, whatever that tool may be, I just don't really care, for a greater way of seeing, for a greater way of communicating, so that we can think deeper, and if possible, and I firmly believe this, I know this, and you know this too, that we can raise consciousness and understanding for the betterment of all. Now, we're not going to change the world, but if we can play a role or a piece of shifting thought and sort of wonderment, right? Like the wonderment of the world around us. That's lifting other people into another space, whether it's wandering into a forest that breathes life into you, or a meal that you're cooking that expands you, or a novel that you've read that takes you somewhere that you haven't been before. Otherwise, if I'm photographing the same thing, if we're all kind of doing the same thing that we've always done, it's sort of like reading the same novel, or reading the same lyric. And I found in a sense of my own attempt to understand this was in this stopping, in this sense of looking through this thing called a camera, this blinder box, because it is, there's so much more going around us, right? It's multi-dimensional. It's more than 3 dimensions. It's 4, it's 5 dimensions. It's almost limitless. And in those times, I find that the most inconsequential element of a story or a moment within the vastness of this forest is where sort of like a door opens. It has nothing to do with anything that I'm maybe photographing on the story. It can be in this webinar or Zoom or whatever we call this, I put together, if you go to the VII website, these little GIFs of I love Instagram stories. I mean, call them whatever you want. They're little like mini films. And it's just this sort of multi-dimensional space of creating. And you know, I'll be just at a fruit stand or a sweet stand, in this case in India, and it doesn't matter where you are. It can be in your own home, right? Look how many days I photographed windows in this old house, and you know, just the theater of life playing out, and it had nothing to do with anything. I don't know if Gianna, you would ask me if you wanted to share links. I'll try to do that later. I'll try to show you that little quickie thing. But anyway, and those moments sort of like pull me away from this over absorption of what I think I'm there for, because you really don't know what you're there for. If you think you know what you're here in this life to do, well, you may kind of know, sure, I think we all kind of know, but we're always searching for more. And that more is when you not just let go, but when you go into, you know, some cultures, we have 2 eyes. So the 2 eyes can see. And in some cultures, it's many different ways of calling it. For a simple way, you know, the 3rd eye, and in many ways, I find it's not always easy to feel that 3rd eye, but it's in that space that you begin to feel. And in many ways, I feel it's when I sense it's when we begin to actually only can see. Otherwise, we see that which is before us. We can compose it, we can have it come over here, whatever. But where you absolutely deconstruct yourself and everything around you in order to understand the magnitude of it, the simplicity of it, the suffering of it, the beauty of it, so that we can actually see. And so this reason why I wanted to share all of this is really not to so much to discuss me. I'm not so interested in myself. But I would love to open some of these thoughts up to all of you. You know, we can spin this, if you like, into, you know, career and all that other stuff. But, you know, I wonder if your careers, if you feel that there's a struggle, which there always is. Everything in life is a struggle. If it wasn't, it wouldn't be so beautiful. Every alleged struggle is a lesson. And but it's this. I'd love to hear from as many of you as possible. And I, as Paul mentioned, I wanted to visualize us, connect us with each other through this amazing thing called video and Zoom, instead of just typed messages. To hear how, are you stuck? Because we all get stuck. And how we can unstick ourselves. And because most of the time, the muckily sticking we do to ourselves. You wake up in the morning and you're born again. It's like it's like a rebirth, and you have this vastness of all that you can do. It's not about possessions. It's not about wealth. It's about doing something with your hand, with your mind, with your feet, with your eyes, with your voice, and but oftentimes we muddle it by overthinking, by chewing too heavily on something that distracts us from the incredibleness, whether it's pouring down rain outside or bright and sunny or mystically foggy. We just tend to muddle ourselves. And I often have found that when you're in a space that isn't so internally, isn't becoming internally muddled, these moments of opportunities, let's say, and call that to career, okay, begin to open. Expect nothing and be, of course, thankful for everything. And that connects to your careers. This, I want to do this, I need to do that, I want to work for this magazine. Okay, well, great. But what are you giving to it? It goes beyond just pretty photographs. Everyone can make pretty photographs. Everybody always has been able to make pretty photographs. Even meaningful photographs at times. But there's more. And it's not something that I can teach you, and nobody can teach you. Don't believe anyone that they can teach you how to see. It's something that is so inside of yourself that you have to, for the lack of another word that I can come up with at this moment, it's this need to give to yourself, to kind of let go, and not like a garden all the time, trying to construct it, because you will spend a greater part of your life and your career and your photography trying to manage it, distracting you from the greater possibility that is already before you and within you. How do we open this? Does anyone have questions or thoughts, or raise your hand? How do we do this? I can't see questions.
John, if you look in the Q&A box, there are a couple of questions already. But if people want to type some questions into the box, and then we'll invite those of you to speak. But before we do that, I just had a question for you then, John, on this. How do you let go? If you're on an assignment, let's say, and you have to sort of do these more mechanical things that we have to do. Do you have any kind of practices or strategies or ways that you allow yourself to tune into this sort of different way of thinking? Do you have things that you do consciously, or is it more of a unconscious relationship with the world around you that you try to engender when you're actually out in working in the field?
No, well, it's conscious and subconscious, depending on. Well, really, it can be anywhere. I stop and go to little tea houses by the side of the road, or a coffee house, or walk down a little alleyway, or a place where there is nobody, where there's very few. And sometimes I'll just sit. Now, of course, that's easier said when you're covering a war or a conflict. Things are moving intensely fast, or you're covering a crisis of some sort, or you're on a very short assignment, let's say. or things are happening, you know, rapidly around you. But not everything is like that, right, Paul? You have, you know, probably even more experience in this vastness than I do. But where you, these letting go moments, or these rewiring moments, where you see things that have nothing to do, or you feel things that have nothing to do with the assignment, are what give you life, what nourish you, so that when you are in these moments of intense movement or intensity or difficulty, all of that, we are a product of everything we experience. And the more we give to ourselves for these not quieter times, I find them to be incredibly loud when I'm in those moments. Not loud in the sense of audible, but in the sense of sort of profound giving of what I was oblivious to see, because I was so preoccupied in trying to, you know, allegedly presume I knew what I was there for. So yeah, it's often, Paul, to literally stop, to completely just stop. Again, if the situation allows for it. If you're going to go photograph a portrait of somebody, you're at somebody's home, you carry with you every moment of your life, all of your past, so you're there to perform, right? You're there to do ballet. You're there to play the violin. You're there to perform, but all that past memory is already in you. That is, if you give to it, expands you in those moments. And that's why I want to share that there's often times that you can give to that in those more solitude moments. They will help expand us, all of us, into understanding why we're there at that given situation, and in many ways, why we're here in this life. Don't know if that directly answers your question, Paul, because I don't know if it's fully answerable, because every situation has its own sort of
course.
Do you have
any? We have a nice suggestion for Fiona. Do you have any images that you could pull up that you could talk us through that sort of give us some insight into that process? And then we've got some good questions coming through. So perhaps share an image or two with us, and then we'll have a question. Then maybe share another image. That might be a nice way to do this.
Yeah, that would be nice. How do I screen share? All panelists. Dink. Okay, can you start sharing when someone else is sharing?
Well, nobody else is sharing except you, so.
Oh, okay.
You go ahead.
All panelists. Did that work?
John, click on the big green button next to the smaller big.
Click on the big green button next to the smaller. Oh, yes. Okay, hello. Oh, there's all sorts of stuff floating here. Oh, that's the thing I was pressing wrong. You know, I've been doing this sort of series on what was playing out in the Middle East, and let's hope this can be a little tranquil now, moving forward. And I've, like all of us, like many of us, I've been somewhat sequestered here in the house for a very long time, mostly because I work primarily on long form narratives, and a project that I started before COVID began is now beginning to manifest again, because I can internationally travel. I'm just waiting for a new passport renewal. But so I started to think, really it began yesterday morning. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story. It's just one video yesterday along the river. Right in the back here is a river that passes by, and the sounds of birds were all around, and the mist was coming off the river. It's really simple stuff, really, like, oh, it's so simple. But there was some beauty to it, sort of mysterious beauty. And I thought, what am I going to continue? What am I going to move into? And I remembered this moment that I published yesterday on Instagram. Last night, I usually publish in the evening. from a story in a place that profoundly affected me. And that was in Armenia a few years back. And it was at this simple, I don't know if you can see this, sorry, I've got everything open, at this simple fence that had nothing to do with what I was there for. Absolutely nothing. And it was just driving by it. Like, oh my goodness, look at this. Don't know why. Got out and there was this beautiful sound. Let me see if I can, let me see something here. I don't know if you can hear, or you can go to my Instagram feed. I don't know. I do a lot of field recordings. And I don't know if it plays. Can you hear it? I don't know if you can hear it, but oh, it's a little shaky because it's coming through the internet. But I did this field recording of the birds above the trees, and what have you. And it's a simple picture, Fiona. Had nothing to do with anything. I was there doing a story on the centennial of the Armenian genocide. But it was these moments, or this room of a train station that used to connect Armenia with Turkey. What were other moments? Cars that were used as like fences. Just this beautiful landscape of art. This family's home with this pink, or not pink, but like a lime, lemony green umbrella on a table, and this beautiful wall. And these are things that we all do photograph, right? But I really fall into them. I mean, I'll maybe spend 10, 20 minutes on it, just like getting lost in it. Oh, these pipes where I think they're, heating fuel or cooking fuel, serpentine everywhere around the landscape of Armenia. You see it in Georgia and other former Soviet nations. And they have nothing to do with this story, Fiona. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But, oh my God, I think we went here 2 times, 3 times to photograph these pipes because I couldn't get enough of it. And yet I was there to do, a story about centenarians who are still alive 100 years later, in their homes, and in many ways just getting lost in a semi-structural way, because I have to sort of compose a visual, script or a little symphony, so to speak. But it was all of these, what is this? Why is this? That have nothing to do with anything, that open these abilities. I don't know if they even open any ability, but it's that I let myself go, so I'm not trying to hold on to something that I believe in, because it's not about me. It's about being in this space, universe, whatever you want to call it, that everything then starts to present itself. And that is a very simple way of maybe explaining it. I'm trying to see if, and maybe also because I do audio, can you hear when I do an audio? Here, I'm just going to do
I think we heard the bird song before, so give it a try.
You hear the birds now? This is just the audio recording. Do you hear anything?
Yeah, it's very faint though.
Okay, because it's coming over in the other speaker in the other room. Anyway, so I do a lot of audio recordings, and where is this? It's in Images Archive. Okay. And so I find that, let me see if I can try to get out of this. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm totally distracting everyone here. But it may help or give an answer to, may give an answer to something. There really are no answers. There's just sort of a limitlessness of possibilities. Oh, I can't see it because I'm not on that computer. Anyways, but I do a lot of audio recordings, again, that have nothing to do with the story. And they are another form of therapy for myself, that, you know, just photograph cars. and yeah, okay, it helps that Ararat is in the background. This is not toned. I'm showing you, you know, deep into my vulnerability of the archive here. Here I was back at that pipe again in daylight, and oh my God, I just kept going back and back and back. Again, having nothing, Fiona, to do with it. So I don't want to drone on one question, because I hope there's some other things here. But I hope, Fiona, that answered your question, or gave you some love and enlightenment that I hope expanded.
Thanks. Okay, let's see if we can try and invite someone to speak. So
yeah,
Sakshi Patwa, you asked a couple of questions there. So if you want to kind of try and combine those, I'm going to try and give you a microphone. There you go. So
Sakshi,
Sakshi, you should be able to, I'm not sure whether the video is enabled, but I think you should be able to speak. There you go.
Yes. So there are some times when I really want to capture a moment, and at that point, maybe because of the surrounding, because of the people I am around with, I am not very much with photographers or some people who are very much open with themselves. But at that point, I see that I want to take that moment, yes, but it doesn't make sense with the complete environment. Why take that out of all so many things that could be very much attractive when you post it or something like that? But that moment when I am like, no, I do not want something which is very attractive or something, but I just want to take that nail on the table, or which I feel it is very much, I get a feeling when I see something and when I want to capture it. But also there are many times and there are people around me or giving me some thoughts like that. No, that's not something. So have you experienced anything before like that? And how should we get over it? And don't listen to stuff around, and just follow or capture what you want to.
Sakshi, thank you for being here. Would you like to be captured?
No.
Listen to the word. Would you like to be captured? Would you like to be taken?
No.
Okay. Words mean something. Nobody wants to be captured. Nobody wants to be taken. You're there to give. If your energy is subconsciously, and again, words mean something. I'm going to speculate that you're from this beautiful, magical place called India, or somewhere in South Asia, or maybe at least ancestrally on this incredible planet that we all live on. And I hear in South Asia often, clicking. Clicking? What's a click? Words mean something. Nobody wants to be captured. Nobody wants to be taken. Make something. Become curious with that thing on the table, or that person, because they're sensing that we all put out this is not trying to be like overly heady or spiritual. No, this again is a more universal understanding of humans, of how we are. We all have an energy, and everywhere you go, only make something through giving, and build a relationship with that nail on the table because it's fascinating, or that woman or man in the market, or give to that curiosity and show them, if it's a human being, even if it's not a human being, give to that inanimate object its value. Because we're putting out an energy that is felt by everything, especially everything that's living. Trees can feel if you're unkind. Not that you're not kind, Sakshi. Everything can feel something, right? Be around a tree or a plant and give to it, and that tree will give to you. Take from the tree, capture the tree, and the tree is going to notice that it's uncomfortable. And people feel that way too, I found. So if I may give something to you, change your wording, because words mean something. You're not going to capture anything ever again, or
Definitely.
you're not going to take anything ever again. You're definitely not going to shoot anything. Only guns shoot. You are going to give and make something. And you will find, the more you open yourself to that, this possibilities of everyone around us actually can feel that from us. And I sense that you will have the world start, and the magic and the beauty and the suffering and the pain and that nail or that piece of paper on the table, you will start to then see it differently, because you're not trying to take that piece of paper. You're trying to give something about it, telling its story.
Yes. Thanks, John. This is really, really helpful and changing the point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, just words mean everything, and our words connect to actions, and our actions mitigate an altering of space. We're not here to alter space. We're here to be in this dimensional space. And that's when we can actually start to see more.
Yes.
Who would love to join us with another?
So Camelia Vaquez Malado, I think you had some interesting question if you want to comment.
I'm not looking at the comments here because I get distracted.
Yeah, I'm trying to moderate them for you, John. So Camelia, do you want to try?
Oh, you're too kind, Paul. Thank you.
Hi.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, Camila.
John. Hi, I'm such a fan of your work.
Oh,
I love the aspect of the spirituality of all the work you make, and experience things and accepting them as they are. My question for you is whether you are making an assignment or just photos because you want to create those photographs of the moment you're experiencing. My question is, do you often think about how will people perceive those images? Meaning, if you saw something that felt in a way unique to you, do you think if people are going to feel the same way, or you just don't think about what other people will experience from seeing your work?
Well, if I'm going to imagine that I can even fathom, let alone comprehend 7.7 billion of us, on how 7.7 billion different fellow human beings will perceive something, I think I'll go mad. And if I were to even try to imagine what you are thinking, well, I can't. It's not possible. I cannot read your mind. You cannot read mine. Nobody can. We think we can, but sometimes, but we can't, and that's beautiful. You carry, and we all carry with us this wealth of being, and we will interpret every color differently. This orange coffee mug may look red to somebody. On this video, it almost looks pinky. I kind of like it in pinkish. If I'm, let's use this, incredibly powerful platform called Instagram, and we can use it for any publication, whether it's, a publication that services and gives to 10 people or gives to 10 million people. No one is better than the other. But I can use Instagram for an example because it's such a public forum. I can get people completely upset. I photographed, it was a few years ago, but after the peace accord was signed a few days ago, I wanted to end on something a little bit lighter, where these watermelon, this Halum, this gentleman named Halum I met on the side of the road outside of Nablus. And, there's always going to be somebody who's going to find something negative about it. I can't make everyone happy. And I'm using that one example, where I can give you others from the sort of every other day for over an 11-day period when the war was going on, and the fighting and the madness was happening. Everyone holds on to I'm using this as one example. There's many different ways to elastically look at this. But we hold on to these beliefs that we have, sometimes rightly so, sometimes that are a little bit too affirmed into a set point of view, not willing to expand or see things beyond what we've been convinced through memory and from experience to be. I don't mind. I get attacked all the time. I've had death threats a few years ago on a story that I did on social media. That, it was shared on social media and on the Nat Geo account. But what am I going to do about it, right? You can't make everybody happy. But I actually sometimes like that, because I've made someone think.
Yeah.
So you a bit to Shakish's question about not taking or capturing. I'm not trying to pick on you, Sakishi, but it's about trying to go into every thing that we do. And I don't like to always just think about photography, because photography is like, bleh, it's beautiful, it's fine, but it's like everything that we do, give to it and present it in its absolute incredibleness, or create and make in this absolute incredibleness that is in with all of us, so that we can stop this internalized muddling, and that we open this possibility to see further, because we ourselves are holding on to a certain constitution within ourselves of what we perceive is it. And I want us all to believe in I want the 7.7 billion of us to all believe in 7.7 billion different things. And but in a common goal of humanity. And so you can't make everyone happy.
Thank you so much.
Anne Grauso, I think you had an interesting question, which is sort of a slightly more pragmatic approach to this spirituality of how you actually make this work with clients and so on. So Anne, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, Anne. How are you?
Great, good. How are you? Thank you so much for giving us all this great advice.
I'm just sharing some love and having some coffee with you.
Well, your work is amazing, so thank you for that.
Well, you're too kind.
I guess my question is that, to your point about seeing content that is so similar over and over and over on Instagram or in the media, any kind of publication really lately, it's been kind of sort of warped, similar view of things like death in the pandemic, or, you know, bombs falling on Palestine. I feel like I'm seeing a sensationalized viewpoint over and over and over again. And my question to you is, how do we as photographers see past that, not create more of the same, find our viewpoint, find something different in the frame?
Yeah. No, I do feel the same way. I think there's no one answer to your incredibly brilliant, meaningful question. And it's again, like everything, 7.7 different answers, billion of them. And in 10 years from now, it'll be 9 billion answers. But there's a sort of, you know, one wholeness that connects to all of us. It is, we do need to see in this case, the pandemic, the suffering that has occurred across our planet by those who have had COVID. I've had many friends who've had COVID. I know some people who've died. The economies that have been wrecked. What's happening in India and Brazil, but let's say India right now, is just tragic. We need to see it, but so how do we see it differently?
Exactly.
The madness that was taking place in the Middle East. You know, the photographers that my understanding is nobody could cross either side. And it was, I think, really important, and I'm very thankful that Palestinian photographers were able to have their incredibly meaningful work, you know, shared to the world of what was going on in their backyards, and also on the Israeli side. And those are moments that are moving so quickly that I've found only can I sometimes give more to them is, again, in these respites, these quieter times of saying, all right, I'm here on this thing that I'm photographing, or this story, and I'm not feeling it, and I'm going to go over there and I'm just going to sit, or I'm going to look at ants. You want to look at the most, unbelievably fascinating universe. Take a moment and just watch some ants. And I'm using this really seriously. Ants, I've looked at ants and photograph ants quite a bit. I even can show you a little video and photos from Armenia where I was photographing ants that had nothing to do with the story. And it's those moments that when you then, they're all, I shared a post the other day about war using memory and the conflict that was taking place. We carry with us memory of everything that we experience. We carry the memory of every one of our answers. You carry the memory of me, and I carry the memory of you, because we are sisters and brothers. It's in our DNA. That's memory. But in the moment you arrive from the beauty of your mother into this dimensional form, you already have the memory of inside of your mother, and the memory of that moment until this very moment that you and I are talking here. And so everything you take to feel, whether it's ants moving around on the ground or a swirly thing in the air that just, has nothing to do with anything, but it's almost you're, hallucinating on hallucinogens, and yet you don't need drugs because everything is so incredibly stoningly amazing all the time. Those things, when you enter into the theater of madness, will expand you to see beyond, so that we can be taken beyond. There's a photograph, gosh, I can't remember his name, Indonesian photographer, brilliant photographer, Justin something or another. Oh, I hope I'm giving him justice. a photograph, this body of a COVID patient wrapped like in packaging in a room. I should try to find it, but try to find it, or maybe Gianna, I don't know if you can find it. Indonesia, Jakarta, COVID. I think it actually, anyways, it's a very well-known image. It ran in National Geographic. He was, I don't know him, I've met him once before, a very kind fellow. And obviously he was in this moment of awareness. How he found it or how he came to it, only he can answer. But so how do we present it differently? There's no answer unless I'm in that theater, and you and I can be next to each other. And the beauty of it is you will see totally different than I do, and I will see totally different than you do. But everything of that moment that we are there to embrace and to present the enormity that's playing out before us will be a part of your memory and my memory that we carry to that space at that time. And when I find that I'm looking through the camera, which I'm sure I don't want to pick on other or mention other photographs, other people's photographs. I'm only going to mention my own. When I'm looking through the camera and I've seen it before, I put the camera down. I stop.
I love that so much.
And if I miss the moment, right? You don't miss a moment. You miss a moment by internalizing it too much. We miss everything by not going into this vastness that's within us at all moments. I'm painting a bathroom upstairs. I got paint all over me. I'm like, and you do it too. We all do it if we stop the internal dialogue. And everything around us, even in this tiny bathroom in a very old abused home, becomes this magical space of awareness. Because I'm all of that memory will be in me. And so I can't give an answer to your question, because as I think I mentioned in the beginning, there will be 7.7 billion answers possibly to it. But when I say that I'm bored, it has to do more with go beyond just seeing with your eyes.
That's great advice.
We all see with our eyes. Imagine, that there's some incredible visual poets, artists, photographers who are partially blind or completely blind. They're working in another space and dimension. We all have those, if you're gifted and fortunate enough to have vision, and not everybody does. So, wake up every day, and when you can open your eyes and put your feet on the side of the bed, you should be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do today? And imagine if we go in and enter that dimensional space, lack of a better way of putting it, an awareness that is beyond seeing.
Thank you so much.
So I can't give you an answer because there are none.
The photograph you were talking about is by Joshua Irwandi.
Joshua, yes.
And it's a spectacular photograph. You're right.
He caught tremendous amount. Somebody else, I think it was Anne, mentioned about people's feeling when they see a photograph, or I can't remember. Sorry, Anne, if I'm not giving justice to your question, but Joshua caught a tremendous amount of pressure because there were a whole bunch of COVID deniers. I used to live in Indonesia. It's really my second home. And he was getting threats and what have you, that he set it up, and how do you know the person had COVID? And the reason why that most likely manifests is because Joshua made people think. And that's our job, or our purpose, or our existence, because you are going to die and I am going to die. What are we here to do in these breaths that we have? And it could be anything. It could be running a shop. It could be being an astronaut. It can be a laborer. It can be anything. There's magic and incredibleness in everything if we can turn off the internal dialogue and give these moments so that we can maybe be fascinated in ants or the swirly thing blowing in the wind, so that when we enter the theater of having to lift heavy things or cook for 200 people at a banquet or being in a war zone, we are expanded by all that we have previously experienced because it's in our memory.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic.
Thanks, John. Thanks for your question. And you managed to answer half a dozen other questions that people have asked in that one as well, John, which was great.
I don't mind going longer. I know.
Yeah,
Paula,
no,
you got better things to do than
we can keep it going. We can keep it going for another 15 minutes or so. I think it's really beautiful listening to you, John, as always. So, Scott, you had an interesting question about how to refill your energies when you're working. Do you want to try and speak to us, Scott?
Sure. I hope you guys can hear me coming through.
Yeah, we hear you fine. Yeah, great.
Yeah, just like I've been deep diving into a lot of sort of Japanese philosophy and art. And I've got this idea of like having like a mental or spiritual cup. Like if you're trying to go out and see what the world has to offer you, like a lot of mental energy is sort of spent on being open to what you see and feel. And sometimes you're fortunate enough to fall into a zone and everything sort of comes, and like you feel like you're getting more than you're giving. But the corollary to that is sometimes you're spending a lot of time and effort trying to be aware, and then it can be very draining. Questions of like what you do or strategies or things that you do to sort of like, as I'd say, refill your cup, so to speak, to keep your mind and your perceptions keen.
You said something, Scott, and thank you for being here and for your question.
No, I appreciate it.
It's a true one. You trying to remember now what you said about 28 seconds ago was you are kind of overthinking this thought of how do I fill my cup when you're in that space of trying to fill your cup.
Yeah.
And you're overthinking. It's about letting go. It's about thinking about absolutely nothing. Imagine the wealth of information you'll receive when you think about nothing, because you're not receiving anything. And I'm talking about awareness, you're not receiving anything if all you're doing is having a conversation with yourself. And the metaphoric cup is always wanting to be filled. And it's in every philosophy, it's in every culture, it's in every way of life. It's just we oftentimes put have a lid over it, or we muddle with what's already in our cup and not allow ourselves to be filled with what everything is already there. Connecting to a bit of your question, but also maybe others, it's being also alone within yourself, and then in the presence of others that lift you. We are a product of, again, everything we experience, every event that occurs to us, the smallest to the greatest, and we are a product of everyone around us. We want to be in doesn't mean that you don't want to be around people or that anybody's bad or anything like that. No, but you want to try to be around others that not only just lift you, that's almost too simple, but that are guiding you almost subconsciously, so that you're not inside of this space of distraction. Oftentimes our greatest element that holds us back are ourselves, and then also those that are around us. So if you really want to have this cup filled, I don't think it'll ever be filled, because it will you want it to overflow, and in the overflowing you give to others. And that's where you are in a space of others that are like-minded. You are then giving to the other, whether it's a partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's a community. VII started as a community of people who were very independent in their core being, but poured and gave to each other. And so be around others that pour to you, like water, like a flow. And this fits into every philosophy and every culture on our planet. It's the culture and philosophy of being human. And every dimension and space of culture has come up with their own way of interpreting this. No one place has it right or wrong. Everything. That's why I want to have 7.7 billion of us all believing in 7.7 billion things, because we hold fast onto something and can't let go. And we do that in ourselves. We hold fast on an idea and we overchew it. And we sometimes, if you want to fill your cup, and to maybe be really direct to your answer, okay, fill it with tea or coffee, but fill it by looking at those ants and walking down by the river, as I did yesterday morning. And you can be on a road, it could be a tennis court, it can be wherever, and see, because it will be given to you. It's there. It's just we're not giving to it because it can't give to us. And when it gives to us, by turning off the internal dialogue, your cup will be overflowing.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, John. So Libero Antonio Di Zino had an interesting question about books. There are quite a few questions from writers and about the relationship of writing and language and text to your work. So Libero, do you want to ask your question? And maybe John, just talk a little bit about how words fit into your world vision. Libero?
Yes, greetings, compadre. First, grateful. Yes, I'm alive and kicking. Thank you, kind sir.
That's a good thing. One day you won't be, and that's okay too.
Yeah, my question is about, our a visual food for thought in terms of our diet and our consumption and certainly our appetite. I was curious about the photo books that you have in terms of great influence on you from early on or even today. Do you have one or more favorites that continue to inform your work?
I can't move this monitor here where the camera is, but there's photo books all over there and over there. Well, this may surprise you. None of them. And all of them. The ants inspire me just as much as a brilliant photo book. If you had a book and or anyone here, and even if you don't, it doesn't matter. Just talking to you is like, I'm learning and feeling from this interaction. I'm not trying to diminish photo books. I do books. I have books. It's really photography books. They're all brilliant to me, and they all give me something, and I'm thankful for that. But I like to disconnect everything. I have more meaning to understanding when I disconnect from things or not only hold on to everything that's about photography. Do you know what I mean? It's like I want to hold on to a pole, otherwise I'll, but I also want to be a bit lucid as well. Yeah.
Could I have a follow-up?
Absolutely, please. But to be honest with you, none of them and all of them.
Well, that's brilliant in itself, but I'm so fascinated with the notion of connecting your spirituality to photography in terms of spiritual practice. Would you consider photography your meditation?
one of many. But when I speak about spirituality in photography, which I guess is what this is called about, it's not in a direct connection to what we, at least in English, but in every language that has its own way of saying the word spirituality. It's this other sense of awareness. And this sharing that I want to offer is how then can we see further? How can we give ourselves to this vastness that's around us and within us? The lack of any other word I can think of right now, and I'm sure there are, maybe just get a thesaurus out, I guess, but is this sort of the thing you cannot see, but is there. And so call it spiritual, but on a spiritual basis, that's too structured again.
Right.
It is, I am not giving to myself enough if I only paint, you can't see it, but my toilet seat lid is out in the garden right now. And I can't give to painting the toilet seat this sort of bright red unless I'm in tune with a toilet seat.
Right. It sounds very much like Zen, that's impenetrable because the first rule of Zen, you can't speak about Zen. In your description of photography,
tried to disconnect words, right? Again, Zen, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way. Please, I'm sorry, Libero. I'm meaning it in a positive way, because if I say it's this, therefore that's all it is. It's liquid. It's like when water rolls over a rock, it's encasing it. It's not even encasing it. It's moving over every crack and crevasse that's there. Even the rock on top that's laying on top of sand or another rock, it is still coating it under that rock. Maybe not as much as over the top sides and left and right or whatever the dimensional space of the rock is. But you want to be, I want all of us to be able to be that rock in a river of limitless possibilities that are before us. And in this giving, otherwise we're going to see and create the same thing over and over and over. Nothing wrong in that, in the big sort of dimensional universe of things. We need information. Okay, well, and we need to learn. Okay. And we tap consciousness of others who hadn't seen it yet or paid attention to it yet. But imagine if we can go beyond, and whatever the beyond is, I don't really know, because it's so different and multifaceted. And that's the beauty too. Just like all the pieces of the bathroom that are on a table out here, they all have a different dimensional space to them. How do we give to them in this act of interacting with them so that in photography, we can tell a narrative that takes us beyond the obvious into the unknown that we never had imagined. And that's not Zen, that's not anything. It's everything. And it's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Let's take maybe one
quite,
more question.
Yeah,
easy.
Great. So Santiago, I think you had an interesting question about objectivity, subjectivity, and magic realism. Do you want to try asking that?
Wow, I love this one. Santiago, pray tell.
You there, Santiago? Okay, yes, so away you go. Yes, away you go. Thank you.
Okay, you listen to me?
I'm here. I hear you, Santiago.
Oh, sorry. I need to read my own question because I'm not a native speaker of English.
Oh,
so
I wish I could the answer in Spanish for you, but
no worries. Okay, listening to you, we could understand that you always start from a very personal, subjective, and introspective base when documenting stories. How do you stand with respect to the demand of documentary journalism to maintain objectivity? Is documentary expanding towards a more subjective interpretation, towards a kind of a magical realism that is intersected by the experience of the one who's telling the story?
Wow, okay.
That's a difficult one, sorry.
No, it's not difficult. It's just a lot of pieces to put together. Well, everything is subjective from the individual creating it, whether again it's a chef or a mechanic or a hairstylist, their interpretation of something. When you're cooking a meal, that woman or man cooking doesn't have the same palate that you or I have. We all have a different palate. And that person she will give, or he will give to that meal based upon their palate. They'll be tasting it. Oh, yeah, no, a little more here. All subjective. When we're looking through this thing called a camera, we're being completely subjective, because outside of the frame, right, we're not just horses with blinders on. We're horses. We're almost like with binoculars on, right? A horse can see kind of up and down, but they can't see left and right. When we look through a camera, we're blinded left and right and blinded top and bottom. It's only what we are seeing in this very limited frame. There's things happening everywhere, behind you, above you, below you, to the left, to the right, slightly different degree, whatever. So we are subjectively choosing what we are seeing. If you remove yourself from the narrative, from that place, humans are a planetary species, and we divide ourselves with lines, and these invisible, horrible lines. What's mine is mine, and what is yours, and we try to take it from each other all the time, because we don't find our commonality for the betterment of all. And we will always go in, unfortunately at times, with a perspective of something. But our greater awareness is not about us, but all of that is transcending before us. So do people come, and your question I think is a very good one. Are people coming in with a subjective idea that they want to present? Always have. I'm already being subjective just by the position that I'm composing the frame in, because again, I'm blinded by all these other pieces that are around me. I'm feeling only like a chef cooking a meal, the flavors that I am feeling and tasting, and I can only just be a conduit. But it's not about me. It's not about manipulating it. I mean, those are whole, that's a whole bunch of ethical importance. But let's go beyond that. That we know that you don't, get, fiddling with that, because the enormity is already there. Why do you need to fiddle with it? That's where you're not looking at the ants or looking at the twirly thing or looking at all of these things that are around you to already find that even this stick outside the window from me here is interesting. Maybe I have to wait for the light to get a little less harsh, but maybe there's still a way to do it through the old windows here, or the lead glass that's all waiting. I don't know, it's irrelevant, but in the relevancy of how do we see it, or the possibilities of how do we see it, I'm still being subjective on how I compose it. So you can never remove that, just like a chef cannot remove the flavor that she or he is tasting, of which will be tasted in 20 people in a room, 20 different ways. But are people walking in with a set agenda? always have. Does that mean that if everybody is, doing something that isn't beneficial for the whole, that you want to do that too? Well, you have to go into your own, inner being of that. Do I have an empathy for the marginalized and the disenfranchised because I'm privileged? Yes. Am I going to lie about a situation? No, I'm going to open myself up and put myself beside myself. And if I have the ability to put myself behind myself, which is not easy at all, it becomes their story. My role is only in this dance of composition, in the blinders that I'm in. The truth to your answer to your question is that there is no one truth. The truth has to be answered within inside your core being. And I think we're in this sort of, and maybe it happens all the time, but we're in this sort of, consciousness, awareness across our planet. I think the internet has, as much as it can be viewed detrimentally, there's always, strangeness going on. But even in darkness, there's always a lot of light. We're questioning things more around our planet because we have so much access to information. And if we walk, in a sense of fascination, in compendium with others that want to go and make us rethink everything that we've ever done and where we're going on this only place we can live, this place called Earth. It's a really incredible, limitless, unbelievable period of time. And it always has been, but I think it's actually even more incredible now that we can use truth, ethics, honesty, humility, a lot of kindness, a lot of giving to fundamentally change humanity.
Thanks, John.
I think that's a wonderful moment and note to leave this amazing conversation with, John. Thank you so much for opening up and being so beautiful and honest and poetic with us today. I really enjoyed that. Very interesting. And I think although you did show a couple of photographs, in a way, I think it was really great that we didn't have photographs to look at. I think it was much more interesting in some ways to explore some of these ideas in a more contemplative, almost philosophical sense. So thank you very, very much, John. Thank you so much for all the attendees. Sorry we didn't get to everyone's questions, but we had so many. Over 170 people at one point and 140 of us still here now. So
you're too beautiful. Thank you for everyone who gave of your time. I was hoping that Elfrida would make an appearance, but she's oversleeping on the chair over there. But she's a big loving goofball. But thank you, Paul, for being here through this and for doing all of this. My
pleasure, John. It was fascinating. So thank you very much, John, and thank you, Gianna, and thank you to all of you for coming today. Some fantastic comments, some great people obviously really found a lot of depth and value in this discussion today, John. So thank you very much for opening up to us, opening your soul and your heart to us, and we'll keep in touch and see you soon. Do please keep an eye on what we've got. Some great events coming up as always with 7 Interactive, and wonderful to see such a consistent audience coming to our events. It really, obviously it's what we do it for, so it's fantastic to have all this support. Thank you all very much, and goodbye for this week.